A life spent pursuing the next adventure.
I remember as a kid, I just wanted an exciting life.
A life that has taken Steve Watkins all over the world. From the Burled Arch on Front Street in Nome, to the harrowing cliffs of Mount Everest, and nearly a decade spent in war zones.
It was a violent outpost. We were bombed regularly and frequently and extensively by the insurgents.
In 3 decades, Steve Watkins amassed more memories than most will have in 3 lifetimes. But those memories aren't always good.
It's unfortunate, but yes, my PTSD is characterized by a lot of bad dreams.
This is the Steve Watkins story, Pursuit and Peril.
Alaska has long attracted people with adventure in their hearts. The tallest peaks, harsh winters, and the untouched wilderness has often been a beacon for men and women who want to test their limits.
Yeah! Good job!
I met one of those adventure seekers in early 2013 on the sidelines of the Iditarod Trail in Ruby, Alaska. A veteran who was riding the trail on Snow Machine, putting together a plan that some may call foolish, but to him was meant to be inspirational. Throughout the next half hour, we'll introduce you to Steve Watkins, a former soldier who has survived more life and death experiences than seem believable.
I was injured in Afghanistan. I was medevaced out to Dubai and then the U.S. for emergency surgery.
After being injured in Afghanistan in 2013, Watkins returned home. He was 90% disabled and suffering from severe depression. In an effort to overcome his challenges, Watkins set a goal to be the first person to complete the Iditarod and climb Mount Everest in the same year. A journey to inspire other veterans, but this journey would take him to places he never imagined.
And how do you introduce yourself at a party?
I try not to talk about myself.
Whether at a party or in any crowd, Steve Watkins' achievements grab your attention. West Point and MIT graduate, Army Ranger, paratrooper, contractor in conflict environments, dog musher, and mountaineer, just to name a few.
He did sports and he did theater.
I remember as a kid, I just wanted an exciting life.
I told my kids, if there's something you want to do or try, just do it. And I forgot to add, you always can rein it in a little bit too.
What were you trying to accomplish?
Part of it was my lifelong pursuit of something exciting and meaningful. I think I was in search of maybe myself.
What did you find?
Through my activities, I found that I was never completely satisfied.
That thirst for more led to a post at Fort Richardson and a volunteer deployment to Afghanistan.
What was it like?
Oh, it was the best year of my life. It was true service to our nation. It was a violent outpost. We were bombed regularly and frequently and extensively by the insurgents.
Risk was ever present.
One key to success has been coming to terms with the fact that I may die, and that's something that I've long since come to terms with.
Pursuit and peril, inseparable.
We've heard it described war as a drug. It is.
Watkins' career includes a decade of leadership in conflict environments, taking on the role of contractor after retiring from the Army. Work that's led him to Iraq, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Central Asia.
You need to take risk to feel alive, feel normal, feel happy.
I'm trying to not need to take risk to feel alive. I'm trying to scale back into normalcy. It's not easy because it is so intoxicating. But that's one of my challenges. It's a very personal and very private challenge.
As is his ongoing recovery from severe injuries sustained in Afghanistan in 2013.
Just not really ready to talk through that one yet.
Leaving the veteran 90% disabled and questioning every aspect of his future.
It was time to really take on these adventures. I was suffering from PTSD pretty bad. I needed to move forward in an aggressive way.
Aggressive might be an understatement.
Going to the Iditarod Trail Committee for vet checks this morning.
Watkins decided after surgery he would become the first person to complete the Iditarod and summit Mount Everest in the same year, no matter his lack of experience at either.
Well, the Iditarod is a great combination, all things that I enjoy. It's a historic physical challenge. It's the Arctic environment, dogs. I love it.
An extreme physical challenge, but also a chance for healing.
There's definitely a therapeutic element to mushing. Some of the more vivid and graphic and violent things that I've seen. It's a steady and painful process of coming to terms with those images.
He hoped his journey, no matter how trying, would serve as inspiration to others.
I'd like to inspire veterans, particularly those with post-traumatic stress disorder, to overcome their challenges by undertaking physically rigorous and audacious endeavors.
The key for Watkins was unlocking the right motivation.
I made promises to the survivors of deceased veterans, and so motivation was never a problem.
But you never at any point considered quitting?
I wouldn't know how to quit. I made promises to people who meant the world to me, so I was going to do whatever it took.
It took 12 days, 10 hours, but Watkins, along with his team of 11 dogs, made the 1,000-mile trek to Front Street in Nome, earning that coveted Iditarod finisher's belt buckle. He says that moment forever changed him.
Felt like, there was me before crossing the world arches and the me after. It was that paramount, and I felt truly a part of something greater than myself. And it's just an indescribable feeling.
And for most, that feeling would be enough. But for Watkins, it was like kindling for the fire, a sense of confidence that would propel him in his next mission, to stand atop the tallest mountain in the world. Coming up next on Pursuit and Peril, about a week after completing the Iditarod, Steve was on a plane to Nepal to summit Mount Everest, a journey to inspire others that would take a tragic turn. Well, he's already completed the Iditarod, crossing underneath the famed Burled Arch in Nome. Now Steve Watkins is on a plane to Nepal, his next adventure to summit Mount Everest. Severely injured in Afghanistan in 2013, Steve Watkins took stock of his life.
I was on the surgery table, and I decided, I knew then that was my time.
Watkins had a choice to make.
I was either going to shrivel up physically and emotionally and mentally, and that was going to pretty much be it. And the greatest chapters of my life would have been written. Or I needed to push myself.
And push he did, setting his sights on being the first person to complete the Iditarod and summit Mount Everest in the same year.
I felt like going from one to the other would be a way to inspire veterans, which was my goal. I really just wanted to show my fellow veterans that this is a way to carve out a better life.
It took 12 days, 10 hours to reach the Burled Arch on Front Street in Nome, earning a prized Iditarod finisher's belt buckle. But there was little time to celebrate. Everest loomed large.
You know you're in Nepal, man.
The climbing season was nearing peak form.
Within a week or so of completing the Iditarod, I was in Kathmandu.
The journey to Everest was an adventure in itself.
One of the most special parts of the experience are the Nepalese, the Sherpas. I spent a lot of my time with them, hiking along with them, learning their language. I learned a lot in a month. What's your name?
Pooja. My name is Manti.
Oh, you're pretty.
An experience Watkins and his girlfriend Joy Chirasmi will never forget. She joined him on the week-long trek from Lukla, Nepal to base camp before returning home to follow his journey online.
What were your thoughts when you first landed at base camp?
Everest is just incredible. It reminded me a little of a large multinational fire base in Iraq or Afghanistan. You've got all sorts of nationalities, all sorts of colors and sights and sounds.
Sights and sounds, steeped in tradition and ceremony.
Before every expedition or before each climb, there's a religious ceremony to ask permission from the Mother Goddess from Mount Everest for permission to climb.
Ice axes and crampons are blessed, the puja pole raised, spreading prayer flags across base camp.
Given what happened, I suppose that religious ceremony is codified in my heart and mind.
The upbeat mood could never foreshadow the tragedy about to unfold. On April 24th, Watkins and several fellow expedition members made it to Camp 1, the first of many acclimatization ascents, packing light, personal items left behind. They would return to base camp several times before pushing higher up the mountain.
The trek from base camp to Camp 1 is unbelievable. This Khumbu ice falls, this jumbled ice, I mean, you're on a moving glacier at 17,500 feet, elevating up to 19,600 feet. And you're going through some of the most treacherous and dangerous terrain I've ever seen. Not some of the most dangerous that I've ever seen. These ladders that are lashed together with rope are very rickety. There's a lot of give to them. And as you're going across, you look down and you can't even see the bottom.
With each perilous step, the summit closer and closer in sight.
In my mind's eye, I had experienced the actual moment of summiting many times. And it's emotionally, it's almost overwhelming.
Standing on the world's tallest peak, a death zone, with his Iditarod belt buckle in hand.
I wanted to bring the belt buckle up to the top and perhaps take a photo with it. No, maybe even leave it up there. I'm not sure.
That photo, nor the summit, would come to be.
Do you hear that?
On April 25th, as Watkins and members of his expedition were acclimatizing at Camp 1, a massive and deadly 7.8 magnitude earthquake was about to strike Nepal. Coming up, we take you back to Mount Everest, as the deadliest day in the mountain's history was about to unfold. Fresh off completing the Iditarod, Steve attempted to become the first person to finish the race and climb Mount Everest in the same year. He did it as part of his recovery process from post-traumatic stress disorder, which he suffered while deployed in Afghanistan. But his mission would never be completed, as a deadly 7.8 earthquake was about to hit Nepal. The summit of Mount Everest was now within sight, and Steve Watkins could so clearly picture the moment that he would finally summit.
Getting to the top, it's a summation of many weeks and even years of preparation.
But this veteran's mission, to complete the Iditarod and summit Everest in the same year, was about to unravel. And as with many of his life's pursuits, peril followed.
April 25th, shortly before noon, the ground started shaking.
The whole ground is shaking. Do you hear that?
I actually had CNN on. It was, I think, about 2 o'clock in the morning or so, New York time.
Some of the people there tell us that some buildings have collapsed, buildings that suffered damages.
The ticker comes up, says, 7.8 earthquake in Nepal, and I had just come back from it 5 days ago.
Oh! No!
That avalanche now barreling towards Watkins and his fellow climbers.
My fellow climber, Villa, who is one of the greatest female climbers in the world, she yelled avalanche. And we look up, and it was a small avalanche coming down from the top of the world. And then it starts to build up volume and speed, and you can start hearing it. And it just almost kind of slowly became shocking.
Watkins called upon his decade of experience surviving in war zones, but this was an unfamiliar enemy.
I'm looking for something to get behind, there's nothing. It became, in my mind and heart, just obvious that this would likely be the last moment of my life.
He had pictured his death many times before. he was certain his time had come.
And I thought of my friends who have died in war, and I said, I'll see you soon. I'm coming now.
He quietly dropped to his knees, but for the deluge of thoughts bombarding his mind.
I thought, what a wonderful life. What a wonderful life I've had. I thought, I don't know what I did to deserve such a great life, but I had a great one. I thought for a moment that this was ironic, how I thought I'd always die in the sand, and here I was in the snow. I like that.
He waited for the inevitable, even hoping it would come quickly. Snow and ice particles raining down on his flimsy tent. And then it stopped.
But all right, well, what now?
The expedition leader gathered the group in a large tent, words hard to come by.
It was a very difficult moment. There's a lot of emotion in the room.
Watkins hearkened back to his military and leadership experience.
And so I chose to say something. And I said what I had said many times before. I said, guys, we are so lucky.
But relief didn't last long.
We radioed down to base camp saying, don't worry, we're okay. Expecting them to go, oh, that's great. But instead they were like, we're not. Base camp is demolished. There's several fatalities.
Among the fatalities, 6 Sherpas from Watkins' expedition.
They're wonderful. Their loss is so sad.
We've got 3 helicopters flying loops between base camp and Camp 1. 70 some odd people are trapped up above the ice fall. The job of these 3 pilots is to extract as many of them as they can.
It was like a war zone. That was the best way that I could conceptualize it. There was dead bodies, there was gear scattered everywhere. It was a disaster zone, ground zero.
Let's stack pads, stack sleeping bags, so we know what we got.
The dead in sleeping bags, being evacuated by air. Desperate searches for food, supplies, and equipment daily. The cleanup went on for months, long after survivors returned home, trying to bury difficult memories in the past. But the deadly avalanche also buried memories Watkins desperately wanted to hold on to. That treasured Iditarod finisher's belt buckle.
I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere. I exhausted myself hour after hour, day after day. It was almost illogical how much I wanted to find that belt buckle. To me, it symbolized something great, and I had lost it. Or in my mind, I thought I had. And I was searching for it over food and clothing. I needed to find it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. It was emotional for me.
Watkins hasn't given up on Everest yet. Constant visualization offers inspiration.
When the top is reached, it's a moment of rejoicing inside, and it's just overwhelming. And hopefully someday I'll know for sure.
Steve Watkins survived a war zone, completed the Iditarod, and lived to tell the story of the deadliest day in the history of Mount Everest. For most people, the next logical step would be to wrap themselves in bubble wrap and sit quietly inside a padded room. But as you're learning, that's not Steve. His next step, well, where else? Back to Afghanistan. Steve Watkins has spent his entire life with his foot planted firmly on the gas pedal. He says he's just not ready to slow down yet. After completing the Iditarod and surviving a near fatal avalanche on Mount Everest, he's returned to Afghanistan as a government contractor. Why did you decide to go back to Afghanistan?
Well, I keep going back because of a sense of a purpose and duty. I guess some offshoot, I'm helping to try and make America safe.
Watkins is a project manager, overseeing nearly 300 people.
In its simplest form, I'm responsible for everything my team does or fails to do.
His team is scattered across Afghanistan, gathering information for the Ministry of Defense.
I mean, we hear explosions and gunfire all the time. It's a war zone.
There's no such thing as a typical day.
Every day has its unique set of challenges that are in no small part affected by a large, strong, and growing Taliban.
Affected, a simpler way of saying danger and death are a way of life.
Just within the last few months, I've had a number of close calls. I was really in the kill radius of 3 Taliban attacks. I was saved by barriers and bunkers, and in one case, a few moments
Watkins estimates he cheated death that day by about 10 seconds.
I directed guys to run, and we ran from the incident, and it turns out that about, I don't know, maybe 15 people or so were killed, several children.
Dark moments like those have long haunted his dreams.
Battling the PTSD, is it when you're sleeping, or is it?
It's unfortunate, but yes, my PTSD is characterized by a lot of bad dreams.
Yet Watkins remains optimistic about the future.
And there's an old sit-down palace here.
With a front seat view on history, he fields a lot of questions from friends in Alaska.
I'm asked a lot about ISIS. That's big right now. Who are they? What do they want? And what should we do to defeat them? And I'm asked, should I be afraid?
Should we?
Absolutely not. The greatest reason I don't want people to be afraid is because that's what they want.
Watkins believes defining success will be the determining factor in whether the war on terror is won.
We can't win if our definition of winning is to completely eradicate Islamic extremism.
And as for winning his own battles,
Is risk an addiction?
Oh, absolutely. Risk. It is an addiction, and the challenge at this point in my life is to not need it.
in the next few years, Watkins envisions a transition out of conflict environments and into, in his words, a kinder, gentler future.
Taking a step back, is that going to be possible for you? Do you think it's going to?
I think so, and I'm excited about it.
So now the question is, how successful was Steve in finding a kinder, gentler life? We recently reached out to him to see what he's been up to since we interviewed him last winter. Now, since we spoke with Watkins last February, he was accepted to Harvard University, where he is earning a master's degree in public administration. He still supports operations in Afghanistan and was there this summer. Watkins plans on entering a career in civil service after graduating. He says he still loves running, dogs, and climbing mountains, but his main focus is now graduating and entering the next stage of his life. Thank you so much for joining us as we followed Steve from the trails of the Iditarod to the peaks of the world's tallest mountains. This is as far as we go for now, but we're sure his adventures won't end here.